In an industry stuffed with marketing bullshit, empty promises, and shiny-suited liars, one woman's had enough. She knows what it's like to have the wrong clients, no money, and no time for fun. But she also knows how to fix it. And on the Business for Superheroes show, she promises to tell the down and dirty truth about business, sales, and running away with the circus. Here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the Business for Superheroes show. I'm Vicky Fraser and this is my husband Joe.
Hello.
We are drinking red wine tonight.
We are.
There's no gin. Well, there is gin in the house. There's lots of gin in the house.
There's much gin in the house, but we did open a bottle of wine last night and somehow didn't finish it, so we're finishing it now.
Yeah, cheers. Ding ding. Chin chin. Cheers.
That's very nice.
I feel like we should only drink gin during the podcast, you know.
It does feel a little bit unfaithful, doesn't it? Sorry about that, listeners.
Sorry about that gin. Sorry about that Vicky. I'm apologising to myself right now. Okay, so I'm going to start by telling you a story about Gary Halbert.
Gary Halbert.
Halbert. Yes.
That makes all the difference.
Yes. He is a very famous copywriter and marketer. Well, I'm going to tell you my story and then we're going to talk about the huge mistake that most business owners make when it comes to trying to sell people stuff.
Blimey. Okay.
I know. Well, one of many, really. Gary Halbert was a very famous copywriter and marketer back in the day. He's kind of one of the old school, of, like the old direct response marketers.
So what are we at? What's the year?
60s, 70s, 80s.
Okay, old, really old school then.
Are you being sarcastic? We're not.
80s was like the 80s was like 20 years ago or something.
Yeah, kind of 60s, 70s. Anyway, I'm just kind of really freaked out now that
You're making it up.
I'm making it up. Yeah, I don't think I am. You freaked me out. Talk.
So Vicky is now just Googling when was Gary Halbert. He's going to be current, isn't he?
No, he's not current. He's dead.
Oh, okay.
You made me say it like that. I feel terrible.
Jeez. It's all gone horribly wrong.
He was like 60s, well, 70s and 80s, really.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know why I'd let you.
That was a derail. Well, you
Totally
kind of, we started the podcast and then you went straight into like actually talking about stuff.
Well,
Wasn't much preamble.
no.
Listeners don't come here for business advice.
Yes, they do. We've got no gin. What wine are we drinking? Oh, you know what? Gary Halbert. Anyway, he wrote advertising campaigns that sold billions for his clients and he made millions for himself, despite going to prison for a while.
Okay.
He wrote a series of letters called the Boron Letters because he was in Boron prison in America. I can't remember what for, not anything violent. I think it was possibly tax evasion. But he wrote letters to his sons and they're a very famous series of letters and it's kind of, you know, read Gary Halbert stuff basically because it's kind of a lesson in how to write. Anyway, as well as writing $1 million copy for his clients, he also used to do marketing training courses that focused on selling by mail.
Okay.
So mail order selling. And mail order selling, by the way, that's kind of proper stuff because that had to be stuff that worked because it costs a fortune. Well, it costs a lot of money to send this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever want to really learn about testing and measuring, try and get work copywriting. If you're a copywriter, try and get work copywriting for one of the big mail order companies or anyone that does mail order these days.
Yeah, it's not like sending out a gajillion emails for free.
No, it really isn't. It's like you can put out all the crap marketing in the world if you're doing online stuff because it really doesn't cost very much. But if you're sending physical stuff in the mail
with stamps on
and, you know, packages of stuff, this isn't just like a crappy letter that you might send out. This is why I get frustrated with people who are like, oh, I'm just going to send this one letter. It's like, then you're wasting your money. It needs to be a proper thought out campaign. Anyway, during the courses that he did, the copywriting training courses, he would ask his students to imagine that they owned a hamburger stand.
Okay.
And he asked them what advantages they would like to have on their side if they were in a competition to sell the most hamburgers. So I guess a bit like what's it called? The Apprentice, where you would have a competition between teams, you know, to sell the most. or whatever it is that they do. I haven't seen The Apprentice for ages. But yeah, he would ask them, and he always got a lot of different answers from his students. And, some people would want the best meat. Some people would want sesame seed buns or like fancy bread or something like that. Some people would be looking for the best location. And there was usually somebody wanting to offer the lowest price as well.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, Gary would always tell them that he would give them all of those things. He would give them every advantage that they had asked for because he only wanted one advantage. And with that advantage, he would whip the pants off all of them.
Mm-hmm.
His words, not mine. And the only advantage he wanted, do you know what it was?
No.
The only advantage that he ever wanted was a starving crowd.
Okay.
The only advantage that I ever want is a starving crowd. Not for hamburgers, because I'm not going to sell people hamburgers. I'm vegetarian.
Vegetalist.
Yeah. But most business owners, and this is the big mistake, most business owners, especially those running small or solo businesses like myself, like most people listening to this podcast, I would imagine, they don't know who their starving crowd is and they don't know where to find them.
Okay.
And that's a shame. Take Bob, for instance. Bob doesn't exist. Bob's a builder. Actually, Bob the Builder does exist. And when I asked Bob who Bob's ideal customer is, he smiled and said, anyone with a credit card. I've fictionalized the person that I'm talking about because I've actually had this conversation with somebody before.
Anybody with money.
Anybody with money. Haha, said I. But really, who is your ideal customer? And he looked at me blankly and was like, I just told you, anyone who can pay me. And I suppose that's a start because you don't want customers who can't pay you. You kind of want people who have got enough money to pay you. But that it goes without saying a little bit, mostly, and it leaves you a pool of potential customers as wide as the edges of the earth. And that's not really where you want to be flinging your marketing money. Kind of
everybody.
Everybody.
Untargeted, expensive.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And not to mention, really horrible human beings can have credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do business with horrible human beings. Do you?
No.
I won't take money off just anybody. And, I have lots of criteria for doing business with people. But I remember receiving an email from one of my email subscribers. This is not particularly long ago. I had asked, every now and then I throw questions out to my, people on my email list. And I had asked, in this case, what is your biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge that you face in your business? And this person came back with an answer. And it kind of seems obvious and reasonable on the surface, but when you dig a little bit deeper, it's utterly the wrong approach. So she had said, we have a niche service. We need to advertise to a massive volume of prospects because conversion is low. When without putting too much thought into it, that seems like an obvious, unreasonable thing to say.
We have to hit 1 million people with our adverts because only 2% of them have any interest in it whatsoever.
Yeah. And when you're in your business and you're panicking and you're like, oh, I need to, we're only getting a tiny response. We need to reach more people. And that's the knee-jerk kind of panicky surface reaction.
Send out more stuff.
But, no wonder conversion is low. It's always going to be low with that kind of scattergun approach. And it's kind of like, trying to hit everybody. It's like the buckshot thing. You're shooting clay pigeons and you're not being precision about it. You're just sending it in a wide spray.
Just throwing a large volume of stuff at the sky and hoping something gets hit.
Yeah, if I throw a massive handful of pebbles, I'm probably going to hit something with them. So, which is exactly the approach that most business owners take with their marketing because they really don't know any better. But that kind of approach costs a fortune and it brings very little back in return. And it's soul destroying as well.
Makes you feel like your marketing isn't very effective.
Which it isn't.
Yeah, you spend a lot of money for not much return.
Yeah, a lot. And you can run a business into the ground doing it like that.
Yeah. And it's these days, it's kind of unnecessary as well.
Yeah, it was unnecessary anyway, but
targeting's an awful lot better than it used to be.
It is, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that because there's targeting and then there's targeting. Anyway, but kind of coming back to this person, she actually has an amazing, she's got a really, really strong position to start with because having a tight niche like that is awesome because you've got a very small group of people who are clamoring for what you have because they're not going to be, if it's that niche, they're not going to be able to get it in many other places, if anywhere else at all. And so that's an amazing position to be in. Even if you have a product with a massive market broad appeal, you're still only going to find a very relatively small number of people who want to buy from you, because it's simply the way it goes. So if you have a really niche product or service, you're in a really strong position because your starving crowd is right there. It's really cool. You know, I dream of that kind of a niche for people. It's much easier to find them and advertise to them as well, because they've got very specific wants, they've got very specific needs, and they've got a very specific problem to solve. And so finding them and advertising them is super easy. So my worried email subscriber was actually in a really brilliant position. It's funny, I never heard back from her after I got back, and I was like, actually, you're in a really cool position, and kind of explained all this stuff to her. I suspect that what she did was stick her head further in the sand and go, no, that's completely counterintuitive to what I think should happen. And so I wonder, you know, how they did and stuff. But
if you are that person, let us know.
Yeah, if you're that person, let us know. Did you do what I suggested? I would love to hear. Because if people, that's a good point actually. Podcast listeners, if you actually do the stuff that I suggest on this podcast and you get results from it, I'd really like to hear about that, because it's kind of, I mean, I do get feedback from people. I do hear from people, but talk to us, tell us.
Yeah.
We're approachable. We are approachable. And, if something hasn't worked for you, I want to hear about that as well, because for two reasons. Firstly, I might be able to help you make it work. And secondly, if something doesn't work, I kind of want to know about that. If it just doesn't work for you, then, tough titties really. But, if it's kind of not worked for a bunch of people because it's something that just doesn't work. Although I'll be surprised, because we talk about strategies rather than tactics really. So anyway, my niche person with the really small niche, what she really needs to do is identify exactly the kind of person who wants what she's offering, and then just be interesting enough for them to choose to buy from her. It's as simple as that, really.
That's not complicated.
No. Done. Ready?
Okay.
We could talk a bit more, I suppose. The idea is that instead of spending 10 grand advertising to, everyone and his dog, most of whom won't be interested, you could instead spend £1,000 advertising to 100 people who really want what it is that you're selling. And that is far more likely to give you a return on your investment.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you've got a set amount, I mean, it's stupid to have an advertising budget anyway, because if something's working, why would you not spend more money on it to bring more money in? But if you've got a set amount of money to spend, or some money that you like, I'm going to spend this on marketing, you're much better off spending like 100 quid on 10 people, for example, and really going all out to wow them and put all that effort in. If you spend it, you could get a lot of marketing out of 100 quid. You could do a really wow campaign. You could spend a lot of time and energy on it.
You could send them all your book. Several times over,
yeah. And, there's a lot of things that you can do with 100 quid per person. And make it really personalised, really specialised. If you're, for example, if you stand to make 10 grand a client out of, thinking long-term customer value, 10 grand a client out of those people who you're spending 100 quid to win, it's a no-brainer. I can't do the maths that quickly in my head, but what?
I know, because you were spending £1,000 on 100 people.
Yeah, but now I'm spending £100 on 10 people. So if I spend £100, but that person is worth £10,000 to me over the lifetime of our customer relationship, what kind of return on investment is that?
Many percentages.
Yes, it's a lot of percentages. It's like 1,000%? Something like that. So that's a really good ROI. It's a really, really good ROI. It's worth it. So just think about things like that. As in, think about... That came out very badly.
Just think about it, people.
Think about it, people. Yeah, think about it in terms of ROI rather than in terms of hitting as many people as possible.
And the ideal position to find yourself in is with a campaign where it brings in more money than you're spending. That should be where you are aiming.
Definitely should be where you're aiming. Otherwise, you need to be looking at what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're and you by the way, when you do this, you have to be prepared to make a shortfall to start with.
Yes, because you don't know what works yet.
Yeah, and also a lot of times it's going to take time for the thing to start working. So you need to be prepared for it to be a bit of a lag between, between you spending money and getting money back. But that's probably an entirely different podcast for a different day. For now, though, what I really want people to do is what I really want you to do if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, well, how do I find my starving crowd? You have to start with what problems they've got, or what they want, or I tend to come out from the position that you're solving a problem of some kind. That's not always the case, because some luxury stuff is not necessarily solving a problem. It's more of a lifestyle thing. But even then, you can still dig into what motivates people to buy from you.
Yeah, of course.
Because and a really important thing to remember is that you can't create desire for something. Either people want something or they don't. All you can do is try and persuade them to buy from you rather than from somebody else. And that's really important to know. Unless you are introducing a brand new product that nobody has ever seen before.
If you're the only person with a flying car.
If you're the only person with a flying car. Yeah, but everybody wants a flying car.
Yeah, but if you're the only one who's got them.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you can't create desire for something that isn't already there. But
yeah.
Hoverboards.
Well, everybody wants them.
I know. So then you would have to be, well, you want to buy it from me because my hoverboard is the best hoverboard. It's the strongest hoverboard, the smartest hoverboard the best.
It's the least likely to catch fire.
I was channeling Trump then in a hilarious way and you missed it.
Yeah. Sorry.
So, clearly not that hilarious. So yeah, it's to find your starving crowd, you need to understand who they are, where they're hanging out, what they want, what problems they've got. And it's not just about understanding who they are, but what they're thinking when they're looking at your website or your advert or listening to you. We need to know what they're thinking, because we need to know exactly what to say to make them realise that we understand them. So it's not enough to just think, oh, okay, there's people who want my stuff. You've got to get into their heads. And I can give you an example of how I know I'm doing a good job, because every now and then I will get an email from someone who says something along the lines of, are you sitting in my kitchen listening in on my conversations? And my creepy answer to that is, yes, I have every house in the UK bugged. But, actually that's when I know that I've nailed it, because I've kind of crawled into their heads and dug around and figured out what it is that's bothering them. And so whenever I get a bunch of responses to an email, most of the time positive, but every now and then angry, I know I've hit a nerve and I know I've said something true. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, that's all kind of, we're getting a little bit deep there. Let's start simple. Stuff like location, gender, and age.
Okay.
So if your business is local, if your customers and clients come from a specific geographic area, then that's a good place to start. Because you don't want to be going, if you're a dentist.
Yes, if you're a hairdresser, it's not worth advertising 600 miles away.
No. It's definitely not worth it. That would be daft. But, how about age? Do you think that maybe is important?
Yes. Yes, it probably is.
Gender?
Yes.
Pink pens? Pink pens for the ladies.
Pink pens for the ladies, yes.
Marital status?
Could be.
Yeah. Children? Pets?
Almost certainly. People really care about children and pets, don't they?
Yeah, I care very much about my pets. I don't have children. I'm sure I'd care about them if I had them.
Good to know.
All of this is important, but not just for the obvious reasons, because you can obviously target people by this demographic information. You can target people by their marital status. If you're selling honeymoons or something, you want people who are about to get married or who are. And this is where Facebook's can pick up on new relationship statuses. Just engaged. If you get just engaged, I'm starting to get adverts for over 40 women over 40, which is somewhat depressing. So I'm not over 40 yet. I've got another couple of years to go. Thank you very much, Facebook. But if you suddenly get engaged, you'll start seeing a lot of adverts on Facebook.
Yeah, there'll be wedding shoes and
wedding rings, photographers.
Yeah.
People, and it's you can think it's kind of creepy, or you can look at it and go, I can use that for my business.
It's actually very useful.
It's very useful, yeah. And you know what? Even people saying, oh, it's really creepy. It's like, well, actually, if I've got adverts coming at me for wedding photographers. I don't have to search this massive amorphous blob of wedding photographers without having a clue where to start. If somebody targets me with a Facebook ad, then it's like, oh, they've taken the trouble to do their homework and they're giving me less work to do, I can start with them. I might not choose them.
Yes, it's not all insidious shitweasels trying to bend your jelly brain, is it? It can actually be saving you time and effort and putting the things that you are probably interested in front of your face right now.
Exactly. And that's the way good marketing should be, because this scattergun approach is actually, it's not just bad for you and your business, it's annoying for everybody, because it's like, I don't want stuff coming through my door that's aimed at people who are retiring. I'm not interested in it. And yet I get quite a lot of that stuff, mostly because we live in a village where the average age is about 90, I think. So I suppose on the balance of statistics, they're probably doing a fairly decent job with their advertising. But still, all of this demographic stuff is important. But it's not just important for the obvious reasons, for if you're doing wedding stuff or age-related stuff or whatever. It's also important because the clients that I target for my membership group and my masterminds and my products and training courses tend to be aged between 30 and 55. They tend to be married or in a committed relationship, and they tend to have children or other dependents. And the reason for that is because those are people who are more likely to invest in themselves and their business if they have a family to take care of. It's as simple as that. People who are younger and single, without any ties, without mortgages, it's not as important for them.
Yeah.
It's not as pressing for them to do well in their business. I mean, they might want to, but they're going to be less likely to invest in themselves in a serious way as the people that I target for the. So I have very, very specific reasons for targeting people of that age with kids. It's like, I don't have children, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand, the responsibilities and the urgency that goes with it. Yeah. So, so they're motivated to do the work, but the problem is, though, when you need to go deeper than that, and we'll come back to this, I think, next week, because next week will be very, very interesting, because if you just stop at those demographics, you're going to be in trouble, because a woman aged between 25 and 40 with 2 kids, a dog and a house in the country who wants to lose weight isn't a real person. That doesn't really tell you anything. It's just statistics. You need a real person to talk to. And to do that, you need to dig into people's heads. And that's the interesting part, really. The really interesting part. That's called psychographics. So we've dealt with demographics today. It's the psychographics is where it gets really interesting. And that's the part that most business owners don't do.
Okay.
So if you do it, you'll have a serious advantage over your competition, because you'll understand a whole load of stuff that they don't about what really motivates people to buy, why people buy, why they don't buy, the psychology behind it, who's most likely to buy from you and why. And, it's that why that's important. This is where you get to be really nosy and do a little bit of psychology and digging. And this is why I find marketing so fascinating, because sometimes people are like, oh, I have to spend time on marketing, and I have to do this and I have to do that, and I kind of think I should get good at it, but and my answer to that is, it's psychology, it's people's brains. What could be more interesting than what makes people tick? I feel like I've talked a lot and you haven't talked very much.
What? No, you're going well.
Yeah, I don't know. So yes, we need to understand people's motivations, really, I think.
Yeah. And it's one thing if you're busy putting together a campaign on Facebook, you're going to be targeting them demographically to receive the advert, but you're going to be targeting them psychographically with what you say in your advert.
Yes.
And the imagery you use and the words you use and the emotions that you stir.
Yes.
So you need to know both.
Yes, absolutely you do. Yeah, demographics is a good place to start, for sure. But that is where almost all business owners stop. And that's the big mistake that they make. So you need to find out what motivates people and what they're really thinking. It's useful in life as well, by the way. If you want people to help you decorate your house or something, it's like, find out what will motivate them to do it. If your kids won't tidy up their rooms, find out what will motivate them to do it. What's important to them. That's bending the jelly brains a little bit, but I'm fine with that. You know, you got to give something to get something.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So my takeaway for this week is get your demographics sorted.
Yep.
Start with that, and then create an actual flesh and blood person to market to, or choose someone you know who's your ideal customer. Either way, you need to paint a pen picture of them. But start with your demographics, and then next week we'll talk about not the thing that I've got on my notes. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about psychographics and digging into people's heads and why that's so important.
Sounds good.
It is good. So yeah, I think that's it.
That was 25 minutes.
Gosh. Oh, unsung hero. This week's unsung hero is Crunch Ranjani, who proofreads our show notes.
Oh, hi Crunch.
Hi Crunch, thank you very much for all of your hard work. Crunch works for...
Is that what your mother calls you?
I don't know.
It's a good name.
It is a good
I
name.
like it.
You've completely derailed my train of thought now. Crunch works for Podfly, who produces my podcasts.
Hi Podfly guys.
Hi Podfly guys, thank you very much for all your hard work. So yeah, coming up next week, psychographics, digging into people's brains, why that's important, and we can do some chatting about that. You can pre-register for my brand new book.
Excellent.
Which is coming out in April, or at least will be going on sale in April.
Yikes.
You can go to vickyfraser.com/flamingo. Give me your name and email and I will let you know as soon as you can order it. If you're one of the first few, you'll get a little something special. You can join Bookaholics Anonymous for free at vickyfraser.com/book club. This month we are reading The Power of Habit, which is a brilliant book. Totally changed my life. And you could join my superheroes.
You could?
Yeah. Shout out to my newest member, Kelly. Hi, Kelly.
Hi Kelly.
Who is going to be doing really cool things because I had Borrow My Brain with her earlier.
Nice.
Because you get a bonus Borrow My Brain when you join the superheroes to kick you off to a good start.
Well worth it.
That in itself is valued at £250 plus VAT. So it's awesome. But yeah, you could join the superheroes and start actually getting stuff done. And I will help you out with all of this psychographic stuff and the Finding Your Starving Crowd. It's one of the first things that I will get you to do. And you can join us by going to businessforsuperheroes.com/inner-circle. If you liked this podcast, please go to iTunes and subscribe, or leave us a review.
If you hated it, then maybe have some cake.
Yes. If you hated it, don't leave a review. Go and listen to a different podcast, and I'm not quite sure what you're doing here. Or share it. If you know somebody who will enjoy this nonsense, send them to vickyfraser.com/podcast.
Cool.
Thanks, Joe.
No worries.
We'll see you same time next week.
Bye.
Like what you've just heard? Tell your colleagues, tell your friends, send them to www.businessforsuperheroes.com/podcast.